Our next speaker is Eric Orazo, Executive Director of Student and Community Engagement for Olathe, Kansas Public Schools. He will be sharing how key partnerships help provide positive alternative services for youth.
All right, how is everyone? Hanging in there? All right, so I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about, first of all, I got 30 minutes to talk and I'm an educator, so that is tough for me, but I'm going to make it work. So I'm going to talk to you about some programs that I've been able to develop throughout the years. But in order to do that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about myself and my background here in a second. And I want you to know I'm doing that because that's going to set the stage as to why the programs were created and how they work and how I was able to tie in my own background with the programming that I'm doing. So who am I? So the Kansas City Star dubbed me the lowrider teacher. So a lot of people call me that. They're like, are you the lowrider teacher? I'm like, yeah, that's me. It kind of stinks though sometimes when people have like crazy car questions and I'm like, nah, man, I'm just like a teacher that works with lowriders. I don't really know the answer to that, but I make it work. So I grew up in California. If you can't tell, I don't think anybody ever gets shocked when they see me, right? But I grew up in California. I grew up in the Mission District of San Francisco. And I grew up in kind of a rough neighborhood. At an early age, I think I was, really concentrating in school and thinking things are going to be great. I kind of lost track of that in that later years in elementary, going into that middle school age. By the time I was 15, my girlfriend was pregnant at 16. I was a dad. At that point, I dropped out of school so that I could take care of my daughter. I actually went to continuation school and actually got kicked out of school, but it sounds better if I say I just dropped out. So I was what you would call an at-risk student, right? And I didn't graduate traditionally. And when I was 18 years old, I wasn't with my first daughter's mom anymore, and I met my beautiful wife I'm still with today, and she got pregnant. So I'm 18 years old, I have another kid on the way, and I'm like, I gotta figure out how to do something for myself because this isn't gonna work for me and for my kids. So I was actually reading a lowrider magazine, which is crazy, and I saw an ad on there that said, earn your high school diploma. And I was like, sweet. So I called him up. It was a private school in Florida, and it was like super easy. All I had to do was send them some money. They sent me a test, and I passed it, and they sent me a diploma. So I was like, check me out. I went to private school. That's what's up. And people didn't even believe in me. So they sent me this diploma. And then I decided, you know what? I'm going to go to school to be a mechanic, right? I'm going to go learn how to work on cars because that's what I love to do. And I've always been into lowriding my whole life, and I love cars. And so I go to Sequoia Institute of Automotive Technology in Fremont, California. And I'm like, hey, I want to be a mechanic. And they're like, great, fill out the FAFSA, do this, do that, high school diploma, I got you right here. And they said, okay, we just need to take this real basic, high school test that everybody has to take for math, science. And I was like, nah, I don't have to take that. I got the diploma. Did you not see it, right? And they're like, nah, everybody has to take that. So I was like, dang. So I took the test, and apparently the one test they sent me from the private school didn't teach me much. So I didn't do great on this test. I didn't pass my math or anything really. So I took it once, I took it twice. They said, if you fail it the third time, you're going to have to go, we're going to have to take it in 6 months. You can't take it the third time without waiting 6 months. So I was like, dang, I knew that given my situation and what I was living through, that there's no way that in 6 months I was going to come back to take that test. So I had seen a sign at the public library that said, Literacy Plus, teach you how to read and write. So I was like, man, I'm going to go check this out. So I walked in there, and at first the lady's like, no, this is for grown-ups, not for kids. They do stuff for you at the high school. I'm like, well, here's the thing. I got a restraining order against my district, so they said I can go to school in Oakland, but that ain't a good idea either. So I think I should, maybe I could do this. And this retired teacher was like, you know what? Let me work with this kid. I think I can help him out. And I was like, thank God. So this lady was working with me, and she taught me the basics and where a period goes and how to capitalize, and I am not making that up. Like, I didn't even know my ABCs, okay? So I go ahead and work with her. I go back, I take the test, and I'm able to pass that test at Sequoia Institute of Automotive Technology and go to school. So I did. I went to Sequoia Institute of Automotive Technology for 2 years, got my associate's degree. I finally get to the point where they said, hey, now you can go find a job in a dealership. We're going to help you find it. So I go work at a Mitsubishi dealership. I walk in. I'm super excited. The first thing I see is a dude from the neighborhood. I was like, dude, man, you know? And the dude was like, what's up, homie? I'm like, man, right? Needless to say, things didn't go well that very first day. And the service manager came out and he's like, man, this ain't gonna work out, kid. And I was like, yeah, I figured. I'm already loading up my tools, man, you know. And so I put everything in the back of my car and I started driving. And I remember, and I'm not making this part up, people, that really happened, it really happened. I was like devastated because I was like, man, I just did 2 years of this so that I can get out of this, you know, what I'm living through, and it's not even working. Like, I'll never be able to survive, and I got these 2 kids. What am I gonna do? And so I just prayed as hard as I could, and I said, Lord, show me a sign. What do I need to do next? And right in front of me, there was a big old sign that said, en el army si se puede. This is in the army, you can do it. I was like, dang, Lord, you showed me a real sign. That's what's up. That's awesome. So, so I still had my tools in the back of my car, and I went to the recruiting office over at the mall, and I went in there, and I talked to the sergeant, and I said, Sarge, if I join the Army, can you get me out of here? He's like, yeah, we can definitely make that happen. I was like, cool. About 7 or 8 months later, I was in Germany. That might have been a little further than I wanted to go, but he did get me out of the hood, I'll tell you that much. So I end up in Germany. My twins are born, so yes, if you're counting, I'm in my early 20s with 4 kids. And of course, we're all going out to Iraq. My time is up. So I have a choice of either going home or re-upping, and I know I'm going to end up in Iraq, and my wife has these little babies and my 2-year-old, and I have another one in California, and I'm like, you know what? I probably need to go home. So I end up saying, you know, I'm good. I'm going to just go home. So I went back to California, and it felt like time had stood still. I don't know if you ever had that feeling, if you ever gone back somewhere, and it's like, dang. Like, I felt like I did a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing actually happened back here, and it was super frustrating. I can tell you one conversation that I had in particular that just blew my mind. Like, I felt like I had grown up, I had a car payment, I had done all this grown-up stuff. I go back to where I'm from, and I'm talking to one of my old homeboys that I grew up with, and he's like, hey, homie, you know what, I'm gonna get a job. I was like, that's good, bro. And he's like, I'm gonna save. I was like, yeah, that's what's up. He's like, and then I'm gonna buy a pound, right? And I was like, dang, bro. Right? Like, I don't need to be here. So I had some family in Kansas. I've had them for a long time. I had family in Kansas. I have no idea why they started migrating to Kansas, but they did. And one of my cousins said, hey, why don't you come down to Kansas? There's a lot of work down here. I was like, I don't know, man. Do y'all have like paved roads? And, you know, I don't know if I could do this, man. And she's like, man, just get down here. So I came down here to Kansas. She wanted to look at a restaurant that she wanted to open. That wasn't going to work out. But I ended up, do you guys remember those old home buying guides you would get on your way out of the grocery store? So I looked at one of those, and I mean, I'm California, okay? And then I come to Kansas, and I'm like, $80,000, that must be for the shed. You know, like, that can't be right. So I just called a general number. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, I want to buy a house. And she's like, okay, you know, and mind you, this is before the economy crashed in 2008, so like anybody could get a loan, like me. And so, she, you know, quickly I was pre-approved, and I'm looking at houses, and I ended up getting into this house, which was a nightmare, but that's a whole nother story. And I got like a 20% interest rate, which I don't even know what that means. I'm just looking at how much I pay every month. And I got myself into this house, and I still had my wife and kids in El Cerrito, California. And so I'm not making this up. What they used was the income that I had from the military still coming in, but I really didn't have a job in Kansas. So I was like, man, I got to get my family back here, and I need to get a job now real quick. So I told my cousin again, I said, Kay, can you take me to a security company? I just got out of the military. I'm bilingual. Maybe they'll hire me. So I go ahead and go to a security company, and they're like, can you start tomorrow? I said, bro, I can start today. What you got? And he goes, well, I need you to be a high school security guard. I was like, nah, what else you got? Right? I'm like, I am not doing that. So 21 years ago, I walked into Olathe North High School, and I guess I never left. So I came in as a security guard. I had one of those sewn-on badges, which was so embarrassing because it wasn't even like made out of anything. It was all flexible, and I was like, man. And you know, kids are like, I'm in like early 20s, and kids are making fun of me, and I was like, this sucks. But what I did notice at the time is that we had, at that point, we were getting a big influx of Latino students coming in because locally there was another a town called Gardner, and Gardner was kind of being built. So we had a lot of families migrating there, and we had a lot of students. And what I saw was that there was kids acting, talking, behaving, looking like if they were in gangs. And I'm like, these kids are tripping, right? Like, what are they doing? There's no need for that. Like, when I looked out the window back in the day, there was people getting shot over here. There's like a lady jogging with her dog. Like, what are you doing, right? But diving into that, I found that what was really happening was kids were trying to fit in somewhere. And they felt about this big, but if they could pretend to be a gang member, they felt about that big, right? You go from being nobody to all of a sudden, watch out, man, I heard that dude killed 15 people. And they're like, yeah, what's up, right? And you're all of a sudden bigger. And I was like, man, that is not good. I don't want kids to have to do that here. It's pointless. That stuff is toxic. So I'll go up to counselors and I'm like, hey, you need to talk to this kid about this. And they're like, why don't you talk to him? I'm like, nah, man, that ain't my thing. There's a long story there. I don't have enough time to go through all that. But eventually, I got my bachelor's and master's in education. I went back to school, and I was able to do that after work and do all that. But in that process of myself getting my education, I started really looking into the data. And the data tells you there's a strong correlation between high school dropouts and gang involvement. Wherever you see a lot of kids dropping out, you see a lot of gangs. And why is that? What we found was the main reason is that gangs figured out something that we're just discovering in education called relationship building, right? We've heard that today. They're introducing themselves to our kids at the elementary level, more responsibility at the middle school level. That's when our kids are getting in trouble with the law, smoking a little weed, getting into some fights. By the time a kid is in high school, he or she feels that they're in too deep to quit. But this is when the counselor says, hey, Jose, stop doing what you're doing. What do you want me to do? I don't know, but don't do that. All right, that ain't gonna work, right? You're telling me to change everything about myself. That's not gonna work. And so I developed my very first program, which was a leadership program that started in elementary to introduce the concept of leadership. Middle school, more responsibility, college trips, fundraisers, all kinds of fun stuff. And then by the time they're in high school, they're in too deep to quit. Great program, still exists. It was intended at that time for the high at-risk students, but I did know what was going to happen was that it was going to become an academic program, meaning now older sister says, hey, I went through the leadership program and I'm in college, you should join, right? And it starts kind of trickling down, which is fantastic. But what I found was that I started having kids slipping between the cracks again that did not identify with the leadership program. Nah, I ain't joining that stuff, man. That's for kids that want to go to college. That ain't me. And I was like, I need to think outside of the box again and reevaluate everything because I need to get these kids. So I came up with the crazy idea of looking into my background, being into lowriding. And when I was a kid, I didn't have enough money to buy a car, so I built a lowrider bike. And I was like, if these kids like that whole West Coast vibe anyway, let's see if they get into this. So I built a lowrider bike, and I had it at the high school. And kids would walk by and look at the bike and be like, that's tight. I'd be like, yeah. Can I have it? Nah, you can build one though if you want. For real? Yeah. When? Mondays after school. I bet. So they started coming because of the bike, right? That's why they were going. But see, once they got there, somebody had to build the bike with them, right? So they needed mentors, okay? So how does the program work? Each kid that comes in, they get a lowrider bike kit. They have through high school to build it. If they get there, in 10th grade, that's okay. But they get to show off the bike. They get to take it to shows. They get to compete. They get to do all that stuff, make it their own. But they do not get to keep that bike and take it home until they graduate. Okay? So, and you'll see how we're doing so far. But we meet every week. We have, of course, our mentors, and we build some custom bikes. Through that process, as I was working with the students, you guys remember the whole F the police period of time? I had a bunch of kids that were like, nah, man, F the police. And I'm like, why? And what I found was that none of the kids that I was working with had ever had a positive interaction with a police officer. That doesn't mean they had a hugely negative interaction with a police officer, but they'd never had a positive interaction with a police officer. If anything, I got pulled over, I got a ticket, I got in a fight, they took me to jail, whatever, but I never had a positive interaction with a police officer. And what I noticed it was because of this, they felt that the police was out to get them, and there were spaces they didn't want to venture out to because they felt that somebody was out to get them. So it was limiting them from going where they needed to go. So I went up to our chief of police and I said, Chief, we need to change this. Do you have an officer that's down to earth that can come out here and talk to these kids? And I know there's some people from Olathe here, and I'm sure you're going to tell them, but they sent me the goofiest cop they could. But I love him. Logan Bonnie, you'll see a picture of him in a minute. He was able to come over and start working with the kids and show them, who he was. And what ended up happening was that it wasn't just us showing the kids, hey, the cops ain't all bad, but the cops meeting the kids as well, that relationship building piece. And I call that actual bridge building, okay? Because what we consider building bridges sometimes blows my mind. It's like, yeah, I build a bridge and they won't come. So what you're saying is you built this bridge on your own and have some shiny stuff over here that you feel has value, and you're shocked that people on the other side are not just running to come get your stuff. Well, they don't know you. They don't know what you've built for them, and they don't know if this bridge is solid, right? If you build it together, you know that it's solid because you put those bricks down there together. But also, more important than that, is bridges are two ways. I mean, some aren't, but most are, right? They're supposed to be, hopefully. So why are you waiting for people to come to you? Go to them. Get to know your community. And that's what the police department did. So the very first thing we did was build a lowrider police bike for the chief of police, and then we built an award-winning lowrider police car. So that was our partnership with the police department. Then we got fortunate to meet the DEA, and they said, we want to help you establish, not only help you with your current bike club, but we want to help establish chapters throughout the country. So Albuquerque, New Mexico has one through the city. Española, New Mexico has a chapter. We have one in Kansas City, Kansas, the Police Athletic League, and we're working one in Kansas City, Missouri, along with the several chapters that we have in Olathe. Then they asked us to build them a bike that's in the DEA Museum in Washington. So it's pretty cool because there's like Pablo Escobar stuff in our bike. So I was like, can we put it over here? You know what I mean? Like, anyway, but it was cool. So that was a big privilege, but we were able to bridge that gap with the DEA because they saw the benefit of partnering with us. And the funny thing is that a lot of times, people that don't know us, when even I've gone to speak at places and I say lowrider bike, they're like, that's gang stuff. I'm like, well, see, the bike cannot be in a gang because it's like a thing. And it's art, and it's beautiful, and if you're saying that's like your thing, like let's change that, right? And now we're able to go into the DEA. So, just to recap on the bike club, we have opportunities for our kids to network, scholarship opportunities. We average about $178,000, $180,000 in scholarships yearly. They're involved with their community, and more important than anything, we have a 100% graduation rate. Yeah. All of our kids have graduated so far, and most of them either gone to college, law enforcement, or the military, which is pretty cool. So if you take kids, thank you, if you take kids that you think that you know they're ending to their story, based on where they are today, don't do that. Okay, I guarantee you, my teachers wouldn't have thought that I was be up here talking to you folks today. Okay, so that's part of our programming is the bike club, and again, we have chapters throughout the country. Partnerships are extremely important. Our city is amazing. There is no like animosity between the departments or who's working with who. We work together. So big props to that. And with that, another piece to this was, you remember when I told you that counselor talking to that kid and saying, hey, don't do this, right? That's not fair to tell somebody not to do something without giving them something to do. And we really didn't have a community center for our kids that was completely free. And so I was like, man, we need to do something. So I have had for years a program called The Spot. The Spot is an after-school program where kids can come in and just hang out, right, with mentors and all kinds of fun stuff. Well, I've had it in several different places, at churches, at small elementaries, and it would always somehow end up getting shut down. And I was like really frustrated because every time, hey, we're going to have to use this space for something else, or we have a contract with another person and they're going to take over this space, and it would always get shut down. And then I realized, after my experiences with the bike club, partnership is key. If it's Eric's program, it's easy to shut down. But when it's all these people's program, everybody's program, it's harder to shut down. And so I went after those partnerships. And so we developed The Spot. After school, kids come in, they hang out. We have, of course, homework help. We have a bunch of different agencies send us staff. We have a video game room. We have a maker spot. We have an outdoor spot. We have a recording studio. We feed the kids every day. And it's all done, and I'm not making this up, I run that whole thing with $10,000 a year. I'm going to tell you why. The Spot partners, Johnson County Department of Corrections, they give us the building. So it was an actual old corrections detention center, and now I get to use it for this, to keep kids out of the center, okay? And so they give us the space, they pay for the lights, all that kind of stuff. Olathe Public Library, they come over, they run the maker space, they also bring books, which kids can take home and never have to bring back. Johnson County Mental Health, they're there if we need them. Olathe Police Department, the majority of our volunteers are police officers, and that's Logan, by the way, that I was telling you about earlier. He's awesome, he's one of my best friends. And then the Olathe Fire Department as well, which we have also built a bike for. The DEA, so that's pretty cool. And we also have the Sheriff Department as well. And of course with the city of Olathe. So with all these partners, because they send us volunteers, I don't have to pay staff. I also work with a nonprofit that gives us the food. So together, as a whole in our city, we're able to put together The Spot. And in this picture here, you'll see where you see all the officers. You have the Sheriff Department, the Police Department, Department of Corrections folks, and school districts folks, all working together so that we can put something together for our kids. So it's completely doable. The Spot is super successful. I'm working together with a few other cities to try to replicate this. It is not hard. It doesn't take a ton of money. You don't have to overthink it. You just have to find somebody who's passionate and make it work. And we average anywhere, depending on the weather, but anywhere from 60 to 100 kids a week that come to The Spot and get to just hang out. There's no structured time, meaning you have to be here at this time and here at that time. We let them go from room to room. The cool thing about it being an old detention center is there's really only one way in or out. So we get to kind of have a body there that watches that, but the kids get to have fun. Our recording studio is ran by Dennis Soto, who's right there standing next to me. He's also DJ 12. That's pretty funny, but that's actually his DJ name. So he runs a recording studio and works with them. The kids can come in, they can record music and songs and things like that. And all the other volunteers that help out in the different rooms to make this all work. So I said a lot. I'm sure you have a ton of questions. I wanted to leave some time to ask questions. So yeah, let's go ahead and ask some questions if you guys have them. No questions? Oh, we got one over here. Okay.
I was just wondering how you dealt with the naysayers. I mean, there must have been people saying, "You're nuts," or whatever. How did you keep going?
You know what? That's a great question. So I got to be honest with you. Like I said, I started 21 years ago working in the school district. I had the idea of doing this 21 years ago. I wasn't able to implement it exactly 21 years ago. It did take some time, I think, for people to get to know me and trust me and establish those relationships. That was the key thing, is that I'll tell you, I'm one person that's not scared to go out and talk to anybody. If they're like, well, you know, that's the governor, I'm like, cool, who do I need to talk to get an appointment with her, right? Like, I have no problem doing that. But I did have to prove myself, I think, especially with an out of the box idea like the lowrider bike, right? It took time to get there. But I would say with the naysayers, people cannot argue with data, right? So I have to keep that in mind. A lot of times I think that, especially educators, we kind of go with our heart and we do these great things because they feel good and they sound good, and of course we should do it. And we forget about the data and the fact that we have to show that what we're doing is worth doing. And I'm very conscious of that. So I've always maintained that data to show and say, hey, I know you might not like the idea because of X, Y, and Z, but let me show you that it does work, and this is why. And I think that's how I've been able to get from the naysayers. So yeah. Any other questions?
Right over here. Hi, bravo, by the way. And you obviously have a great deal of commitment and dedication. I think there's a lot of our communities that would like to implement something like this, but if you can make it as turnkey as possible, that usually is the best strategy to success for people who are, you know, as most public servants, underpaid and overworked. So I'm wondering, do you have a toolkit that you've sort of developed that you could provide as a means to make it as turnkey as possible?
Love that question. And yes, we do. So what we developed is a manual, a how-to manual that we will hand you free of charge. I make obviously no money on any of this. The only commitment that I ask the individual that wants to take on the project is that they're going to stay in communication with us and that they follow our guidelines per se of making sure that mentors are background checked, that they're connected with a school system, some sort of a law enforcement agency. But if they can check those boxes, we do have a manual. If you guys, there's my information right there. You can get a hold of me. We can set up a Zoom call and then we can chat about that manual, but definitely available to anybody. And like I said, we do have them across the country already. So if you guys are interested in starting a bike club or talking about the spot, just reach out to me. I will give you that how-to, and then I'll meet with you monthly. All the chapters meet monthly to make sure that we're on accomplishing that mission together. I think we have
Got a couple here.
Yeah.
I was just curious to see if you pitched your idea back to your old neighborhood that you came from in California.
You know, it's funny. I have not gotten to work with the city of San Francisco, but I did call the Literacy Plus program, and I did say, hey, thank you for doing this and this and that, and I don't know if they really believe me or not, but they were like, okay, thanks. That is a big goal of mine. I have been working with a gentleman who runs a community outreach program in the Mission District, and I've been talking to him, and I want to get back into that city to establish a program. And again, if you guys, I'm sure you guys put that together, but I got to tell you, I guess selfishly, yes, a lot of the programming I did is because I did think, man, if that was there when I was a kid, how different would my life have been for some of my friends that are dead now or in prison, right? If people showed us that they care. And I got to tell you, showing somebody that you care is more important than anything. I get told a lot, well, I'm not Hispanic. I don't have your background. Can I do it? Absolutely. Show that kid that you care, right? And it doesn't matter. They will follow. You just got to be that mentor. When I was in continuation school, one of the counselors walked up to us. We were just chilling on the stairs doing nothing. And this counselor said, hey, I just watched a documentary on prison gangs. Have you guys thought about what gang you're going to join? Because it could be dangerous. I'm like, dang, bro, like when we were kids, we're like, wow, that's the expectation, right? that we're all going to end up in jail. But I had a secretary, her name was Miss Alameda, and she would tell us, you guys are smart, but you're pendejos, right? You make bad moves. And we're like, man, you know, and she would scold us if we were late, but if we were on time, she would give us a piece of candy. Now, I can assure you, we all had plenty of money to buy our own candy at that time. But we would go to her and say, hey, we're here on time, just to get that piece of candy. And if we were late, we're like, hey, we're late, just to get yelled at by her. You know why? Because we knew that she cared. So that does matter. Any more questions?
Got a couple more.
All right.
Amazing story.
Thank you.
I could match my childhood and young adulthood with yours. I'm curious, how much interaction do you have with the parents of these students that are coming up, going through school, graduating, and how many of them come from single-parent homes?
Great questions. And yes, so we actually at the spot have a one room called the family spot, where we teach parenting classes both in English and in Spanish. And real briefly, I'll tell you that I learned that early on. I can remember talking to this young man, and he was telling me he was going to drop out of school and go work construction. And I was like, nah, bro, this is what we're going to do. I got him all convinced, and he was like, all right, bet, I'm gonna finish up, and I'm going to go to Johnson County Community College. He came back that Monday, and he said, hey, Raza, I'm just going to be straight up with you, bro. Like, I'm going to go do this construction thing. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? And he said, yeah, I talked to my pops, and this is probably my best choice. And I was angry. I was like, man. So I did. I went over to talk to dad, and I'm like, dude, like, I was ready to, like, fight, right? Like, what are you talking? And he's like, hey, man, you know what? I don't have $50,000 for college. I barely have $50 in the bank. And how am I going to encourage this kid to go to college if we can't afford it? And I want him to survive. I want him to do good in life and to be able to make it. And so this misconception that parents don't care, that's ridiculous. What happens a lot of times is that you don't know any of this college lingo and all this other stuff. And so you're going to throw at your kids what you know works for you, right? And how to hustle to get it together. So I started having these parenting classes to teach parents words like FAFSA and scholarships and all these deadlines. And we take them on a college tour. And we show them, and yes, a lot of single moms, and we show them the college campus, and we tell them what their kids have to do. And it's funny because the first time I started doing that, I used to have this early morning homework help, and nobody would ever come. Like, I would just show up and chill there, you know, for a while, like nobody would come. And I had the very first class, we talked about all this. The next day, I showed up a little late because nobody shows up anyway. And I'm like, the heck? There's like a line of kids waiting to get into that program. I'm like, what happened? I don't know, man. My mom said I had to do it, right? But the key thing is that you get them both speaking the same lingo. That's imperative too. So you have a kid that does go to the college trip, and he does hear about FAFSA, and he does hear about scholarships. And when he comes home, what'd you do today? Nothing. You ain't gonna understand anyway, right? But if mom can say, Mijo, what about the FAFSA? Oh, yeah, you know about that, right? So I think that once we can get the parents on board and they realize that it is doable, then all of a sudden they're all on board to help us, and together is how we're able to do this. So yes, very much. Okay, so we have one more question.
Quick statement and a question. I actually have in-laws that live in Olathe, and I've been texting my sister-in-law about the programs, and she's like, oh yeah, I heard about that in the newsletter. So they're really excited because my nephew just got accepted into the Olathe North Geoscience program.
Nice.
Super excited for them. But I work for a city, and I'm wondering what would help from your perspective if a city were to really be able to jump into this program? Like, what would be better from your experience of if Olathe had helped out more?
So, you know, that's a great question, and I could give you as an example, Albuquerque, New Mexico. The city is actually the one that runs that program. And what they have done is partnered with the police department and partner with the school district. So I think that as long as somebody takes leadership, you connect with the others and you bring them on board. So it doesn't have to be the school district that starts it off. It doesn't have to be the city. It doesn't have to be, as long as you guys work together and create those partnerships, that's how you're going to have the success. All right. Well, hey guys, I know my time is up. Hopefully you guys got the opportunity to write down my information. I look forward to some emails. Thank you guys.